Well, we're going to do a few tests now, some technical tests. Sorry about that. I will have to give the floor to each speaker. So now I'm going to try with Silvia Stabile. Let's see if it works. Good morning. Can you hear me? Good. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. It was just a test. Thank you. All right, so we will do like this. I will introduce each one of you, and then after the introduction, I will leave the floor to you. And well, anyhow, I would like to greet all of you. Welcome to all the people that are following us. Welcome to all of you again. This is well, this is part of Roma Museum exhibition. And we're going to talk, for the second time, we're going to talk about the challenge of digital transformation. During this session, we will talk about strategies, contents, and experiences for the accessibility of collections of museums, archives, libraries, but also intellectual property and copyrights. Together with me, to talk about these issues, we have Silvia Stabile, well, that you have already seen. She's a lawyer, she's a teacher, professor. She deals with the law of the cultural heritage. So Silvia again, let's see if the connection works. Good morning. So I will just quickly leave the floor to each one of you just to test if the connection works. And women first, ladies first. Laura Fornara. Let's see if it works. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good, perfect. So Laura Fondana from Fondazione 1563 from Compagnia San Paolo. And then we have Laura Moro, who's the director of the ICCD. Good morning. Yes, I'm the director of the Central Institute for the Digitalization of the Cultural Heritage. And later, we will also have Enrico Bellini joining us from Google. And we also have Andrew Ellis, director of Art UK.
E infine abbiamo...
Buongiorno, piacere essere qui, grazie mille. And then we have Alessandro Bollo, the director of Polo del Novecento. No, nope. Okay, so in the meantime, we'll continue. So we'll follow this order. I'd like to make a short introduction, and then I'll leave the floor to our guests. So for sure, we are facing a challenge. We have digital transformation in front of us. Challenge is a very important word because it involves many factors, as well as the accessibility of these online materials. However, well, I think it's more a need rather than a challenge. At the moment, it's impossible to have access to libraries, museums, archives, and I am a person who works in the field of research. But I'll try to see if Alessandro Bollo is available now, because I see his name. I see that his name has appeared. Good morning, everybody. I hope you can also hear me. Maybe we have fixed the problems. Okay, thank you. Good morning, thanks a lot. So, as I said, it's a need. Well, apart from the pandemic, which forces us to get material online, accessibility is a very up-to-date problem. I mean, physical accessibility to some places takes time and money, and not everybody has that time and money in order to get material, to get access to material. It's important to talk about this aspect. Being a researcher, I know it's difficult to get materials in order to carry out research, especially in this historical time period. So I'm really glad today to be with people who represent very virtuous examples of improvement of the situation, people that are aware of all the problems that derive from the digitalization of materials. So now I'm going to leave the floor to Silvia Stabile. Well, because, well, of course, there are several parties involved in this challenge. Also, copyrights and legal aspects are involved when it comes to having access to materials online. So thank you, Silvia. Good morning. I would like to share some slides that I have prepared. Let's see if it works. I hope it works. Sorry, just a second. All right. So in the last few months, we have seen an acceleration of the digitalization of museum contents. In this way, there's been a widening up of the materials available on the web pages of museums, apps, property channels and also non-property channels, in particular social media networks and also online platforms for the distribution of cultural contents. For example, also YouTube, Instagram, but also Google Arts and Culture, Europeana. Well, according to a research, more than 60% of the museums has increased visits online, and digital channels generated revenues in 13.4% of the cases. The adopted solutions are several. So the most frequent method was guided virtual visits online, but also podcast. That is a new medium that was widely used during the lockdown period. So podcast is certainly one of the main tools. So these are some examples of some initiatives that were carried out at world level. And in particular, as I said, Museo City, it's an association, it's not a museum, it's an association that promotes cultural and museum activities from Milan. They launched the podcast called Pausa Caffè Museo City, Coffee Break Museo City. This is another very interesting initiative by Getty Museum. It's very inclusive because it involved the users in the reinterpretation of iconic masterpieces of their collections. And this is a definition. So according to ICOM definition, by digital museum, we make reference mainly to three categories of museums. One is the brochure museum, mainly some web pages, therefore some websites conceived in order to convey information to the public, general information to the public about the mission, the training project, scientific project, and the story of a museum. Then we have the content museum. And content museums are digital databases dedicated to museum collections. So you can leaf through and you can see the images related to the works of art of the museum. And then we have the virtual museum. It's an online platform that gives well, a very high quality and accessibility similar to the traditional museum, I mean to a physical museum, the interaction by users is very important. It's very present. And in fact, we know that, well, contents can be created by the users and also they can also upload things inside the virtual museum. These are the user-generated contents or visitor-generated content. Let's now have a look at the main legal profiles related to the digitalization of museum contents. First of all, we have copyright on the contents created or recreated by the users and by the visitors of virtual museums. Then another profile is related to privacy and the protection of personal data, and also rights, image rights, and also the infringement of third parties' rights. So this is the reason why museums now have adopted some policies and regulations about the creation of digital cultural contents. And all these are different forms of museums that we have just seen. With regard to, well, analog contents that are turned into digital, but also with regard to all those digital native contents, that is to say, contents that were born in the digital world, for example, digital images reproducing works of art. We need to make a distinction according to copyright law. We have materials covered by copyright and instead materials that are not covered by copyrights. Well, we know that copyright covers the life of the author until 70 years after his death or her death. After that deadline, the works of art can be used freely. Well, you know, with regard to copyrights, well, we can have copyrights, but then we can also have free use of materials. So, for example, for private study objectives or well, for some other functions or objectives for works of art and masterpieces contained in the collections which are not covered by copyright. Well, I'm sorry, I have to speed up now. I know that, well, it's already 12 o'clock, so I will have to cut. I'm sorry, I will have to shorten my speech and my presentation. Anyhow, well, as well as works of art are covered, protected by copyright, we also have those works of art considered as cultural heritage. So regulation about the reproduction and accessibility of these works of art, we have a very clear regulation. We know that in order to reproduce, that is to say, in order to use images that reproduce the cultural heritage, we have to apply, submit a request to MIBAC, and we have to pay a fee for the reproduction of that work of art. And also, well, a certain percentage on the revenues generated by the user. For example, some time ago, we supported a fashion company that wanted to reproduce on its clothes, on its apparel. They wanted to reproduce some mosaics. And so they wanted to create a fashion collection that reproduced this cultural heritage. So this kind of activity, for sure, necessarily has to go through these procedures. There's a need to ask for authorization to the ministry. Then there's a need to pay for an amount of money. In this case, it was based on the expected results, expected turnover for the fashion company. So it was a proportion of the expected turnover, expected income from that fashion collection. So there's a directive that well, hasn't been implemented in Italy yet. It's a 2019 directive. And so that directive wants to foster, to support the reproduction of works of art, because in this way, well, this favors access to culture, to the cultural heritage and its production. Well, this directive, we don't know how it will be interpreted, how it will be implemented in Italy, even if our legislators usually stick to European directives. So usually there are no deviations. They say that the materials deriving from the reproduction of a work of art, so including also digitalization, is not subjected to copyright. But obviously, well, the director makes reference to postcards and other merchandising objects, but we know that there are many more products. So, in these cases, when we want to define digital strategy, it is necessary to carry out an analysis, a due diligence, an analysis, then adopt some policies in order to protect both the museum and also the users, and also observe the best practices in the sector. Best practices that are usually adopted under the auspices of ICOM. I thank you. I'm so sorry for being short and having to cut my speech. And now I'm going to leave the floor to the next speaker. Thank you. Well, this is actually a very precious speech. Thank you for highlighting some aspects that are not so obvious. Now I'd like to leave the floor to Laura Fornara. As we said in the beginning, there are some virtues, examples that, well, can be a role model for us. And for sure, what she's going to tell us is a role model. Thank you. Good morning to all of you. I've also prepared some slides to tell you what our foundation 1563 does. It's a foundation for art and culture, and it belongs to our foundation in Turin. Sorry, just a second. Can you see? Can you see my slides? Yeah, I think you can see them now. So the foundation, Foundation 1563, it carries out two activities mainly. It is an operational cultural body which aims at safeguarding, protecting, promoting our cultural heritage, and well, in particular, our historical archive of Compagnia di San Paolo, an archive uninterrupted archive since 1563, and it represents one of the most important sources of information about the history of credit and philanthropy. And also we promote research in the field of humanitarian disciplines. So humanities. Mainly we deal with the maintenance of our historical archive, and also we have a humanities program that carries out a study on the Baroque art and a project for the promotion and protection of the libraries of Turin, and also another project connected to digital humanities, and in particular promoting our photographic heritage. We also have another interesting project called The Memory of Labor and the Industry, which focuses on the history of the industry and industrial sector in the northwest of Italy. So I'd like to take the chance to explain to you how digital technologies have affected the way in which we work and how we are now organizing our historical archive. We made a very specific choice, a cultural, civil choice. That is to say, we decided that we wanted our heritage to be available not just to academics, but to the citizens. Because from this heritage and in this heritage, they can find a very important source of information, and it's a very good chance for them to know more about the history of their land. Just to give you an idea of the size of it, we're talking about 2 kilometers of documents, 4 libraries, and also some funds that have been acquired by the foundation, among them Fondo Gallo. It's a very important archive about the history of architecture, and also Fondo Dragone. It's well, an extremely important fund for the history of art. So our heritage and our documentation has increased, has widened up enormously over time. What we do is, well, we deal with the conservation of the archives, but also we offer access to users, as I said. And we're trying to make access available to more and more users. Obviously, the digitalization is fundamental in order to reach these goals. We also make sure that studies and research are carried out on our archives, and we try to collaborate in partnership with our other local institutions, for example, Polo del Novecento, with Alessandro Bollo, who's here with us today. And so we try to share some best practices, and we try to make sure that all archives can be digitalized in order to have a more impact on the community. Quickly, well, I'd like to tell you about a case history on how digital tools have allowed to increase access of these very precious archives to the citizens. We have well, the archive of the Istituto Bancario San Paolo. What is it? Well, mainly it consists of all the documentation collected by the bank when, after the racial law, Institute of São Paulo was delegated by the government to manage expropriations of Jewish houses and assets. So it is a very precious archive. We have all the documentation about the seizures and confiscations of Jewish assets. So around 6,000 books and more than 100 linear meters of documentation. So we thought that such an asset had to be known to the people. It has a very deep meaning, a very important meaning and value. And we shall never forget what happened. So obviously we decided to carry out some activities because we wanted these documents to be available. And therefore, well, obviously we reconditioned the books, the documents, and then we digitalized all the documents. We made an inventory of it. And then we started working in order to make it known to the people. Without digital activities, it wouldn't have been possible to reach the huge results we have obtained. So first of all, we collaborated with some other institutions like Polo del Novecento, and we also managed to organize an exhibition on our foundation's webpage. You can find information about it. And we also used digital tools in order to make sure that some further research could be carried out on these documents. So here you can see an image, for example, of some images of the houses and also the position of all the houses that were confiscated in Turin. So then a beautiful project came out of it. Well, I'm not the only one saying it, obviously. Well, we received many acknowledgements. It's called Le Vite Lives. And this is an example of how important an archive can be as a public history instrument. So Le Vite Lives is a collection of documents. Also, well, it also includes some private archives. Some citizens are asked to take part in the project, so the citizens really felt they wanted to participate, and they also wanted, well, to contribute with their messages. So the result is that, well, we highlight the link between the archive documentation and the lives of the protagonists of well, these stories. At our fund, we have a description of all the houses, very specific description of all the houses that were confiscated, all the assets that were confiscated. So it's extremely important to link the objects to the people, objects and people. So underlining that all these objects were connected to people, the story, the life of people who couldn't go back to their houses, most of them. So it was an extremely precious experience for us, and it shows that an archive can be a tool to raise awareness among citizens, and how digital instruments can favor the transmission of messages, their dissemination, and also a higher number of people can participate in this activity, which is an activity that belongs to the collectivity, to the community. This project allowed us to work in collaboration with many other archives and above all with schools. This is a key topic for us. I'd like to give you another example, totally different, but it also this example shows that the digital revolution has facilitated our activity. For example, for many years, we have been carrying out this program of studies on the topic of Baroque. And as part of this program, we had a project in collaboration with Torino, Fondazione Torino, Torino Musei, and Centro Conservazione e Restauro La Venaria Reale. So mainly, we organized a very important exhibition, the exhibition 1937, curated by Vittorio Viale. This beautiful exhibition didn't have any catalogue, and so for academics and researchers, the fact of not having the catalogue was a big problem. So thanks to the photographic archive of Torino Musei and Galleria Arte Moderna, both of them have a beautiful archive. We worked on their archive. We restored the photographic plates, and through those materials, we managed to reconstruct the exhibition. Sorry, the exhibition took place in 1937, but it didn't have any catalogue, so we managed to reconstruct the exhibition virtually. In our webpage, you can see the exhibition, many photos of how the space was organized, the masterpieces, and also, for sure, such a project allows us to keep on doing research. So gradually, we can enrich time after time, we can enrich the project with new contents. This project was very interesting for us, and we hope we can reproduce it, replicate it in other situations. So again, it's an example of how today new technologies allow us really to highlight the value of our heritage, the heritage of archives. So I know that we don't have much time. And I know that there are some other speakers who are going to speak after me. So this is all from me. I thank you so much for the time you devoted to me. And thank you again. Thank you. Very interesting. And also very precious. Thank you for this concept of archive as a tool of awareness. And now I'm going to leave the floor to Alessandro Bollo, since he was mentioned by Ms. Fornara. Yes, well, good morning to all of you. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this panel. I must say that I agree with both previous speakers. I'd like to share my presentation. I will try. I'd like to explain what we're doing at Polo Novecento. Well, I'd like to make a general remark to start my speech. We were talking about the COVID emergency and accelerating digitalization due to the emergency. We also had to do it. Also aware of the potentials of digital tools for archives, for libraries, also for the world of culture, and for the next few months or next few years. It will be necessary to invest in this logic. So we will have to invest in order to provide accessibility to culture, considering different needs, different types of users. So what we are doing at the moment at Polo is due to the fact that we are aware of the fact that we need to reach different types of users, very different beneficiaries or users that will have different languages, different processes, and we need to reach them in different ways. And not always do we have the right skills and abilities to reach them in a digital way. However, well, during this dramatic time, we realized that we had some gaps and we had to act quickly. Obviously, well, these challenges can be faced by individual institutions, but actually they should be faced by the cultural world in general, starting from new policies and also the ability of institutions to implement them. So I will try to share my presentation. So we're here to talk about digital instruments. Well, I'd like to explain first of all who we are. Polo 900, Polo 900 is a foundation that provides cultural services to the citizens. We have around 10 kilometers of physical documentation present in these two beautiful buildings dating back to the 18th century. We also have libraries, study rooms, we have cinema rooms, learning activities, and Polo Novecento is, let's say, the home of 22 bodies that collaborate with each other, and so it is quite of a unique place, a very interesting place. So I just wanted to start from what I call the atoms. That is to say, we do have our physical dimension, we have our house, and well, physical buildings are sort of neglected nowadays due to our shift to the digital world. Anyhow, we need to move from atoms to bits, and so to digitalization. And digitalization today has different levels. So the process of digital transformation for cultural institutions is at different levels at the moment. We may have the digitalization of contents, digitalization of procedures, internal organizational models, digitalization of design, communication, and the so-called digital engagement. I'm saying it because, conceiving and implementing a digital transformation means trying to put together all these different elements. So all the physical documents that we have, well, converting them into digital format is certainly a huge commitment, but it allows us to reach different types of users, as I said. I'll try to be extremely quick and extremely short. So with regard to the digital dimension, I'd like to tell you about our work on the 900 hub, Novecento hub, that we have created. It is a platform that through which we have uploaded on the net our archives. So, and well, we have managed to integrate different archives into this hub that we have called 900. Laura Fornaro was mentioning the importance of collaboration between Fondazione 1563, 1563, and our Polo, our foundation. Well, they do an excellent job, and now what we would like to do is we would like to create, we have already started, well, we are creating a very inclusive hub that well, puts on the net, not just the archives of our institution, but we would like to be open to some other external institutions. So we would like users through a front-ending methodology, we would like users to be able to reach not only our contents, but also contents of other archives. So through our platform, they may land on the archives of Fondazione 1563 or another historical archive from Genoa. So I'm saying this because, also the design of our hub was conceived in order to be directed mainly to academics. We know that this year, for researchers, it's been very difficult to have access to contents because most of the libraries and museums were closed. So for sure, the research world is our main beneficiary, our most natural beneficiary. But we also know the importance of creating environments for different types of level of users. This is an ecosystem where you can go through, you can navigate in different ways by keywords, for example, or you could also navigate based on different visit routes. Or then there's an integration with our bibliographic catalog, so archive documents, bibliographic material. But platforms like this one are for sure an opportunity to realize the importance of the digital world. Digital instruments, as I said already, allow us to work for different types of users, multiple users. So as I said, researchers, historians, but also a very wide audience. They could be directed to schools. And for example, we have worked closely with schools in order to build some learning kits. So learning activities for students from primary school to universities, and also learning kits for adults to provide them with long life learning. And then, so as I said, multiple beneficiaries, but also, as it was mentioned in the beginning, also multi-product. So the digital content management has to allow researchers to carry out their work, but also, we would like to, as I said, address a wider audience this year. We accelerated a project that we have taken from the past and restarted from the past. So we have launched so-called little pills of history, little narration pills, and then we also made some podcasts. And we worked on women, projects dedicated to the women that changed the world. And always making reference to documents that are present in our archives or external archives, and then some teaching kits or learning kits in collaboration with some other institutions. This is a very delicate time for students. So these are learning kits to be integrated with school teachers' curricula, which can use our materials in order to integrate their teaching. And then I'd like to highlight that, of course, there are some new needs deriving from the digital world. So, for example, the first lockdown period was a time where we tried to listen to the needs of people. We launched a campaign with an hashtag, Ask the Polo, above all to teachers. Our message was to the teachers, we have lots of contents available. We also have lots of know-how. But before putting all of them on the web without any selection. Please tell us what you need during this stage. Which subjects would you like to tackle? Which tools, which language should we use? So we really opened a communication channel with teachers via email and via telephone. The teachers told us what they needed. And so again, thanks to that, we could use the incredible potential of our archives, digital archives, in order to create, as I said, learning kits. For example, the so-called open shelf or some conceptual maps that we used for some issues. For example, the racial laws, resistance, urban transformation, some important people of the 20th century. So this is just to say that for cultural institutions like ours, we are hybrid because, of course, we are a mix of archive, library, museum, and we also offer space to citizens. Nowadays, our challenge is to build opportunities for access and also for involvement of different types of beneficiaries. They also have to be innovative in the language we use. And at the same time, cultural institutions need, of course, to carry out projects that are sustainable. Of course, also sustainability is a very important topic because, you know, the world of culture, I think, reacted with lots of passion, producing contents and, well, you know, often also investing in resources, in know-how, in ability to make contents, but you know, my call to politicians is we now need to find some opportunities and also some policies which allow these important production to be sustainable, because very often the market is not able to cover this offer. We can't ask schools to pay for these products. Obviously, we can't ask teachers to pay. And, well, we know that they have to be for free of charge. And so this is something that we should think about. Thank you. Thanks again for giving me the chance to speak, and have a nice day. Thank you. Thank you for this speech and for highlighting some problems. Well, Silvia Stabile on the chat says that digitalization of archive materials obviously involves analyzing problems related to copyright, because digitalizing means reproducing, uploading on the net means communicating to the public. So there are some related problems that we can't understate. We can't underestimate. Sorry. Now I'm going to leave the floor to Andrew Ellis from Art UK. So this is a virtues example.
Yasmin, thank you very much indeed. I am going to share my screen. So just want to make sure that you can you see that presentation, Yasmin? I'm assuming you can see the presentation. So I'm going to start and give you a very, very quick tour of the work of Art UK. This will take 10 minutes. There's quite a few slides, but I'm going to whiz through it, and a very, very warm welcome again from London here. So what is Art UK? Well, what I'm going to talk about here is a case study that shows how one can bring together a whole country's art on one platform. So who are we as a charity? We are a cultural education charity, and at the same time we are a digital showcase of the UK's public art collection, a platform that's shared by over 3,000 UK public art collections across the UK. The mission is to open up art in public collections for enjoyment, learning and research. I need to stress that in the UK, and I'm sure it's the case in Italy as well, the vast majority of the public collection of art is in store. Much of it hasn't been photographed. And so what we're doing is really opening up access to that art collection. In short, democratizing access to the art we own. Few distinguishing features about Art UK's work. We're very much audience-facing and collection-facing. Huge importance is placed on collaboration. And this is very much about long-term digital infrastructures. The key thing here is that whereas a storeroom of artworks, it's very difficult to share that across museums, but digital infrastructure can be shared by collections in Edinburgh, in London, and in Belfast. Governance is a key aspect of how we run this, and what's important here is that the sector, the museums and the other public art collections play a key role in deciding the direction of the Art UK charity. The charity itself is very small, core team is under 20, and now, as we found in COVID, working remotely is relatively easy, and in actual fact, we'll have very little office space going forward. So let me start by telling you what we do to support collections. So the key thing here is that the Art UK platform is shared by over 3,000 public collections across the UK. This is probably one of the biggest arts partnerships put together in the United Kingdom. Interestingly, only a third of those are museums. The others are hospital collections, university collections, government collections, the likes of the National Trust. And all of these collections, the relationship with all of these collections is underpinned by copyright and legal agreements. So a massive legal infrastructure supports this. Here are a number of the museums that are on the site, but as I said, the museums are only 50% or so. So what do we do? The first big project was to photograph and digitize all the oil paintings in public ownership across the United Kingdom. And this was a project that took 10 years and recorded about 200,000 oil paintings. We're now embarking on a project, we're now completing a project to photograph the nation's sculpture collection, indoors, and also all the public sculptures and monuments across the United Kingdom. And that will be completed next year. And these are some of the sculptures that are now coming on to the Art UK platform. At the same time, the collections can add works on paper to the site and photographs, fine art photographs to the site through a portal. But one of the biggest technical challenges is allowing those collections to upload those artworks in a speedy way. And one of the big investments we need to put in place is a form of digital harvesting that will bring in and update those artworks from collections across the United Kingdom. So it means, this digital infrastructure means that every collection, whether you're a big collection such as Manchester City Art Gallery with thousands of artworks, or the Manchester Police Museum with just 3 paintings, you have your own landing page on the Art UK site. Lots of maps to find your way around, to find those collections across the United Kingdom. And then the digital infrastructure, this shared infrastructure, allows us to then again, exploit scale, exploit technology to share great benefits with these collections in other ways. So, for example, it allows them to use an e-commerce platform, a shop, to generate much needed income, particularly during the COVID crisis. And this allows them to do this without any capital investment, without any risk. Principally, it's print on demand. So here are a number of the collections, the museums that are on the shop. Principally, it allows them to sell prints on demand. You can choose these. We curate them by still life, summer, flowers and gardens. But also they can sell merchandise as well. And this income is shared just between the collections and the supplier to the shop. And this is going very, very well with sales in the last 3 months, treble last year. So a fantastic use of a shared digital infrastructure here to support all UK collections. And this is still very early days at the moment. Only about 80 collections are participating in this out of the 3,000 plus collections on Art UK. Another very interesting use of a shared digital infrastructure is helping collections solve mysteries. In the UK, we have large numbers of artworks where we don't know the artist and we don't know the sitter. Here's a perfect example from the National Trust where we don't know the artist or the sitter. So this digital network allows collections to ask questions of the public and of specialists around this country. So here's a painting in a hospital. We don't know who this doctor is. Big discussion takes place. And within a few weeks, he is identified with an obituary and a photograph. One very, very big find as part of this national art detective network was an original Van Dyck, an autograph work, which was discovered last year as a result of this digital expert network. And this ties into a BBC programme called Britain's Lost Masterpieces. Give you a sense of the audiences on Art UK, approaching 3 million users a year, growing at about 25% a year. And the majority of those users are there for personal interest only. The professional users, such as curators and dealers, are very much in the minority. A key thing for us strategically has been moving away from just being a database to actually telling wonderful stories about the art, telling stories about the artists, about the subject matter. Some of this is art historical, some of this is not. But now there are well over 1,000 such articles on the site. And it means that the front page of the homepage of the site is very much more magazine-y now than it used to be. And this is a very good way of broadening the audience for the Art UK site. Every artist, they're approaching 50,000 artists on the site, has lots of information. You can map their artworks across the country. You can link through to further information from Oxford University Press. And the strategy to focus on stories is really proving to be right, with a very good increase in traffic. During lockdown, we gave the public the opportunity to curate their own digital exhibitions made from art across the UK. And this more recently is going to allow them to do the same with public sculptures, so you can map trails. Finally, a big focus for us is bringing everything together in terms of learning resources. One of the great things we've been doing in the last few years has been taking great art, including a real Monet painting, into schools across the UK. We've done the same recently with sculptures. Lots of lesson plans have been created as a result of that. We have a wonderful competition aimed at the last 4 years of school that encourages school students to write about art for a prize. We have a visual literacy programme aimed at primary schools, which is in its pilot stage. And next January, we'll have an interface that draws together all our learning resources, searchable by resource, searchable by type of learning, to be used by schools across the United Kingdom, also drawing on those stories. Business model, very, very briefly, the costs are about just over €1 million a year to run Art UK, which works out an incredibly cheap amount of money per participating collections. So in conclusion, we enable global audiences to learn about the art in the UK's public collections, all 3,000 plus collections on Art UK. The benefits of sharing this single digital infrastructure are very, very significant in terms of value and economic efficiency. As far as we're aware, no other country has this resource. And this does provide all of those collections, small and large, with the opportunity to open up their art collections, much of which, as I've said, are in store, boost cultural tourism, encourage learning, and grow income. So, a massive thank you.
Grazie mille per l'intervento prezioso.
Thank you so much for your very precious speech. And in the meantime, we have Enrico Bellini from Google, who has just joined us. So I'd like to leave the floor to him. He will introduce to us another platform for a global audience. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you. Yes, well, Well, sorry, I was a bit late, like we all used to do, almost all used to do when we had our physical meetings. It was just normal to be slightly later. But now with these digital infrastructures, well, delays are not accepted anymore. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for being late. Actually, I could listen to the previous speeches, and well, especially the speech about copyright is very interesting for me. I work at Google in institutional relation team, and well, we do many things, of course. Of course, we relate with public making bodies and institutions, but we also have the possibility to follow many advocacy projects. So projects that we develop in order to show the positive impact of digitalization on different sectors of the Italian society. Specifically, I follow and I support different teams that focus on cultural impact. So I personally, well, what I do is, and I'm going to tell you more about Google Arts and Culture. So this is the field where I work, but I also work on the field of copyrights. And certainly copyrights is a very current topic, especially after the approval of the Copyright Directive last year. So these are very interesting topics. I'm going straight to the point. So I'd like to tell you about a platform that we created in order to work more and better with cultural institutions, and in order to, well, to put our points of strength at the service of this system, in particular Google Arts and Culture. What is it? It's a space that was created in order to explore the stories, treasures, collections in more than 80 countries of the world. And it's totally in line with Google mission since its beginning, that is to say, making information more accessible, well, making information accessible as much as possible. In the case of Google Arts and Culture, we're referring to cultural contents. So we would like to help cultural institutions to make their heritage available, their documentation available. And at the same time, we would like to help them make the best use of digital media in order to preserve culture also in the future and promote culture. How do we work? So Google Arts and Culture is a team of different professionals within Google. Well, in terms of flowchart, we are under the engineering team. So as you can imagine, it's a very relevant team, very important inside the company. Well, we don't want to do this job only in order to, well, in terms of corporate social accountability, of course, but we think that it is really a strategic initiative for us. It's also very relevant, a very practical way to show that the digital world of digitalization can really bring some benefits to the system. Google Arts and Culture allows all culture lovers to find out about cultural richness of the world, and they can do it thanks to very forefront technologies. So we provide people with the possibility to enjoy experiences, cultural places, historical events. So really technology at the service of this. Well, with this work that we do, we want to highlight the know-how, the competence of our partners. And since we are a technological company, since we develop platforms, we develop technologies and we put our technological skills at the service of our partners. So obviously, we are not experts in culture, not at all. We think that we need to collaborate with the experts in culture. We don't just want to give them the technologies and will abandon them. This project started in 2011, so almost 10 years ago. And the colleagues who are part of the team now have a certain amount of experience. They have learned a lot from the partners. We have reached a very high level of knowledge. And obviously, we can use this expertise when we start collaborating with new partners. Well, I think it's quite clear to you that this is very important because every sector, every industry has certain characteristics, certain doubts or certain objectives. So also on our side, it was very important to collaborate with different sectors in order to have our project grow. Just to give you an idea, when we started with the first embryo of art project, we had less than 20 partners. Today we have more than 2,000 partners. So there's been a huge growth, exponential growth. Based on this project, that is to say, learning together from each other how to be useful to each other. So, Google Arts and Culture has a platform, first of all. So if you go on any browser, you look for Google Arts and Culture, you will land on the platform. If you're doing it now, you can do it now. I invite you to do it now. So on a laptop or on a desktop, but also with your mobile, in the iTunes Store, iOS and also Android, you can look for the app of Google Arts and Culture. So, well, for art lovers, all art lovers now know this app. So they navigate, they visit the app on the web page, they wait for new contents, for notifications of new contents. So there are many users interested in these contents. At the same time, the partners who decide to collaborate with us they can also have the contents on their website, on their property, so they can embed the contents into their web page or website. So we have well, those people who go to Google Arts and Culture because they are interested in culture, to discover or to get some contents related to culture, or otherwise they can also get to our contents by visiting some other web pages. So on the web page of a certain cultural institution. So again, we can use different channels in order to provide our contents. As I was saying, we don't just provide some space for partners to upload their digital contents, but during the years we have worked in order to develop technologies that are available for free. I didn't say this in the beginning. Our work with the partners, it's a free of charge partnership. Obviously, we have some costs, mainly indirect costs, because we are the technological partner. We will provide the infrastructure. We also provide the staff that works in order to collaborate with the cultural institutions, but at the same time, the cultural institution needs to have a project manager that is in touch with us. They need to have someone who's able to organize their contents. Well, for example, many institutions strategically decide what they want to have on our platform to act as a flywheel. Let's say we know that we can't go to museums at the moment, but we hope we will be able to move freely as soon as possible. So, for example, having the chance to find something online and then going physically to a museum, that's another thing. So the platform may may work in this way. That is to say, attract people and then convince people, persuade people to go and see the works of art in real life. So, well, you know that we already had lots of skills and competence, like Street View, for example. If you go on Google Maps, you have the possibility to see the streets in the world, because they have been mapped by using special vehicles. So we thought, why not transforming these skills and putting them at the service of the cultural world? So we have used the same system. We used a little cart, like a little cart or trolley, with a camera, and in this way we are mapping our partner museums. And so from home, for those who don't have the chance to go to the National Gallery of Modern Art, well, they can see the works of art online. So we're using our skills, as I said, and we're also working based on the needs of our partners in order to develop solutions that are useful to them. For example, digitalization of paintings. When we started with our project, Google Arts and Culture, I've been working at Google since 2012. I've seen the evolution of this project. I remember that when I was supporting Google Arts and Culture in in our collaboration or approach with our partners, we used to ask only for high definition photos, but we have understood that this kind of activity was very important for them. We have now developed a technology called the Art Camera. It is possible to digitalize at extremely high quality. So we're talking about gigapixels. Please visit our platform and you will see the detail of our works of art thanks to our camera. And so we have managed to increase the number of works of art on the platform, thanks to the camera. Once they are digital, the works of art are part of our platform. They are embedded of the partner museum. It's not possible to download them, obviously. This is clearly one of the most important elements for all the partners. The contents can only be viewed, they can't be downloaded. And well, we've never done that. We've never given the users the opportunity to download the works of art. But again, the users can see and discover the works of art. And then we have developed some other solutions. If you think about the cardboard, so made of carton, the Google cardboards, which were donated since they haven't been patented. So they are, it's easier to replicate them. The prototype was made in Paris at the Google Culture and Art Club. And that is in Paris, where we have engineers who are working to develop solutions that could be useful to the world of culture. And then last, well, I would like to tell you about our latest innovations. On Google Arts and Culture, you will see that we are making some experiments. We're working a lot with artificial intelligence, because we would like it inside the culture ecosystem for archives, for example, since there are so many contents. Thanks to artificial intelligence and machine learning, it will be possible to get some further contents, some further meanings from these contents. And then something else that we're doing is we are trying to work on the videos in order to attract the younger audience, a younger audience. Well, of course, we think that these contents are very useful for many cultural institutions, but at the same time, we realize that we are very lucky. Not only are we Google, but also we can use YouTube, and so we can intercept the younger generations, those that are used to videos. So we're trying to favor this mix, this cross-contamination between worlds that are actually quite close one another. So we're working on projects that. So we're trying to create a more proximity between YouTube and our more traditional cultural contents. For example, from this point of view, we have Art Zoom, a set of videos, a series of videos dedicated to art works, masterpieces described by music celebrities. And then Art for You, which is another project that we implemented during the lockdown. Some videos with some exceptional guides from the world of art. A curator and a celebrity were taking visitors inside museums. And then we have published a podcast on the so-called whispered tales. It's called Whispering Traveler. And the first one is about Florence. So, to sum up, I think there's a really wide range of possibilities in front of us. And we're always available to collaborate. And I think we are already, seeing many good results. We're very happy, we're very pleased, very happy of the results we have obtained so far. We hope to continue in this way. Thank you for your very precious speech. Thank you for your presentation. We are slightly late, but now we have to conclude with Laura Moro. So, Laura Moro, what are the strategies at MIBACT? So, based on the examples that we've seen until now, Silvia Stabile asked a question to her. She's asking, with the decision made on 6th of 2020, the government will have to set up a work group in charge of evaluating the economic impact due to the application of Creative Commons licenses. What is the current situation? So this is the question. Thank you. Thank you for the very kind invitation. Thank you for these beautiful presentations about what is being done in Italy and in the UK. Just some final remarks. With regard to what our chairwoman said, we are all in the same boat and we are perfectly aligned. I must say, at every meeting I take part in and also participating in many one-to-one meetings, but we all share the same goals. And also the public administration that is always slower because it has a very complex functioning mechanisms and also an endless heritage to manage, endless documentation to manage. Well, we are all aligned, all fine-tuned. Now we just have to understand how to go on, how to continue to make sure that these activities are part of the same project, or at least to make sure that we are inside the same framework, a framework of values, first of all. So my very first comment is about digitalization. It's not just a necessity. During COVID, we're now living it as a need, but actually it is a condition. And this is good news and bad news. We are already in a post-digital era. I mean, the digital is already integrated in all our actions. So we have to complete our digital transformation. The technologies have already been integrated. What we have to do is we have to transform ourselves. So implement this transformation, complete the transformation and implement it fully. This is the real challenge. So what kind of change will be generated? So cultural, methodological and organizational change. And I think that this came out very clearly during the speeches today. Cultural change. Polo mentioned it, but actually it was highlighted during all the speeches. We have to change our mindset because our goal has changed. We have to understand who are the beneficiaries. All our actions are addressed to external users. Digitalization was born in order to support organizations and their processes. So this is the technology that was necessary to organizations in order to accelerate their work. But now the digital system is here to change our relationship with the users, but there are many users. There's not just one type of users. We have to take care of the user's experience. As Bollo said, we have to consider that we have multi-addressees, multi-beneficiaries, and so multi-product also. But this is very tiring. This is very difficult. We have to be able to do it. The good curator of a collection is not always a good communicator, and not always is he able to use digital technologies. And then another cultural change is, well, what are we transmitting? What kind of vision of our digital heritage? Digital system allows us to see things at the same time, several things at the same time. So we don't have the usual traditional way of showing culture like we used to with art books, but now we have different types of reading, understanding, seeing culture. So it's all based on interaction now, and this is a huge cultural change. So this entails also the ability to narrate, to tell stories, and having the tools to do it. Methodological change. This is also very relevant. Because in the digital world, differently from the analog world, it's not us going towards the objects to look for information, but it's rather the information and the objects coming to us. And so our educational systems, the systems through which we manage knowledge and through which we offer information to the public will also change. So it means working on the relationships and not only on the objects and on the detailed description of the objects. So working on relations means changing technologies. We have to increase the automation of these processes. Because, you know, every collection of every museum is a universe and you never finish to explore it. So if you just think when you have several collections interacting, we've seen it with Art UK, for example. Art UK, this is a clear example, up to Google. So we have to work on the automation of relations. We also have to make sure that data works for us and not us working for data. We spent decades producing data, transporting it from one system to another, but now it's time to make a quality jump, also technological, and so certainly machine learning helps us. But you need to know exactly which technologies you want to integrate into your system, and also are our systems ready to acquire these technologies? So working on interoperability, this is very important. For Polo Novecento, but also many other institutions are working very well on interoperability of the data. And this obviously brings up a new way, crowdsourcing, for example. Art UK showed us very good system. They update their data, they do maintenance of their data, and they also involve the audience and they do education. So that's a perfect example of a very smart way to use crowdsourcing. And digitalization obviously allows us to do all this. And then an organizational change, the last bit, but we have to talk about it too. We are changing as individuals, as a society, but also organizations are changing, museums are changing. I can't just take the digital world and overlap it on the traditional world. Of course, things change. Professionals are changing. Processes inside organizations are changing. And we absolutely need to be able to manage it. The business models are changing. And by business model, I'm not just referring to models that produce economic value. Because, you know, a value is also intangible. But we need to have a model to generate this value. And so, well, I hear people worried when I talk about business models. But, well, you see, we need to have an organization that is able to produce value. So understanding which business models are applied by the digital system, multi-product, multi-channel, they are business models. Streaming is a technology that totally changed the way in which we present our collections, our digital contents, and the way in which we involve the audience. We also need to update our policies. We need to adjust the law, the regulations to the digital technologies. Well, clearly we need to maintain, let's say, the legal standards, but well, in order to fix the law, we need to know exactly what is our objective, who are we talking to, who are the users, with which methodologies, with which business models. And so copyright, privacy and protection of the cultural heritage will interact with the new world. About the rules on the reproduction of well, works of art, I'd like to, well, especially to Andrew Ellis, well, the reproduction of works of art are not paid, is not paid in Italy. Well, only for commercial use. For pure commercial use, you have to pay, for example, if you use it for merchandising, for advertisement, for reselling. The images related to the works of art are free of charge for scientific use, learning use, creative use. So only pure commercial use is regulated and it has to be paid for. It is necessary to specify that. In Italy, there are people that are asking for commercial use to be free, to be for free also. As it is happening in some other museums in Europe. So they are asking us to do this. The ministry has a very clear position on that. Well, we think that Creative Commons licenses working on copyright, well, they can't, they are not sufficient. And so commercial use needs to be regulated. At the same time, Creative Commons will continue doing its task. Obviously, things are changing. It's still work in progress. And so the ministry ease of thinking about, well, a possible solution for this system, for our institutions and our technological level. We don't want to create any asymmetries because we know that right now the technological world is very asymmetric. So we will certainly set up some work groups as requested by the Culture Commission. And this will occur in two different stages. First of all, we will try to understand, we will try to study exactly the current law. And so we will try to help institutions perfectly understand the law. And then secondly, at second stage, we will try to understand which development models can be implemented also including commercial use. I'm going to conclude saying that the European community doesn't exclude the possibility to pay money for the reuse of materials from museums and archives, because the European Commission knows exactly how expensive it is to produce high-quality data on the cultural heritage. So I don't think that by eliminating the word not commercial on Creative Commons, we will generate value. I think that the entire procedure has to be fully shared by everybody, and everybody has to be able to have access to the possibilities and potentials that the digital world is offering to us. This is all. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Well, thanks to all the speakers, really. You have described a very interesting scenario, and some key concepts have come up. We have understood that the audience is really diversified. It was really interesting to hear about the young people, the need to listen to the audience even before acting, or as Laura Fornara said, using archives as a tool for awareness. So thank you. I'm really glad of the results of this meeting. Thank you. I would have loved to stay longer, but the platform doesn't allow us. Thank you so much to all the listeners also, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.